Revised notice of public hearing, Conservation Commission, originally posted on October 23rd, 2020. Fall River Conservation will be holding a public hearing on Monday, November 2nd, 2020 at 5:30 in the first floor hearing room, 1 Government Center, Fall River. Let's start with roll call.
Walter Amorello.
The reading of the open meeting law thing?
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Getting ahead of myself here. All right, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledgeable and permissible. All righty, roll call then.
Walter Amorello.
John Brandt.
Andrew Les.
James Hornsby.
And then we also have Patty Aguiar from Planning, Bill Kenny from Planning. We have Fred TV, and I don't think we're on Zoom tonight, right?
Nope.
No Zoom.
What you see is what you get.
Cool.
And we do have our new member, but it's not attending the meeting tonight, Louis Medeiros over there. Ferrara. Alrighty, first on the agenda is Notice of Intent NOI file number SC-24-755. Owner applicant is ASE Investment LLC. Project location is 69R Alden Street, Assessors Map J-27-9. Filed by SciTech Inc. on behalf of applicant ASE Investment LLC to construct a 16-unit multifamily townhouse development with associated grading and utilities. A portion of the project falls within a 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, bank, and portions of proposed lawn area falls within the riverfront area, A zone flood hazard area. All righty.
It's tough with the mask, right?
Yeah.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Dan Aguiar. I'm a senior project manager at SciTech Engineering with addresses here in the city, as well as Dartmouth and Raynham. As the chairman had stated, the proposal before you this evening is a property located at 69R Alden Street, owned by ASE Investments LLC. For location purposes, you'll see on the aerial photo that we have up on the board, we have to the left Quikasham Street, Alden Street, running along the very top of the plan to the northern terminus. As you can see shaded in yellow, there is an access, 30-foot wide access right-of-way that provides access to this property that you see shaded in the dark yellow line to the bottom part of the plan, the southerly portion of the property. This is what was the Parker Candy Company, if you all remember the mill that used to be located to the rear of those structures.
Yep.
To the west of us, we have the Loft Apartments complex. They've done a fantastic job there with the improvements that they've made with regards to parking and the rehab of that mill. And then directly east, we have the Fall River Knitting Mills apartments, which did just about the same thing with creating their new parking and renovating those mills for the apartment uses. About 6 months ago or so, we went before the Zoning Board of Appeals and received approval from them through a special permit and zoning relief to allow us to develop this property for a multifamily purpose, which is allowed by special permit in this type of a zoning district. So what we were able to get permitted with them, and then now presenting to you, again, this is just a blown up portion of that yellow shaded in area that we had seen on the previous plan. This gray area is the 30-foot wide access way, which is currently the access way that brings you down for the Knitting Mills apartment. This is their existing parking facility. And then for the Loft Apartments, again, you can see this is their parking facility. If you've been out there for orientation purposes, this is where that little gazebo is in the landscaped area. So our development, you'll see the proposed, what we're actually creating, if you took a line and connected the end of the pavement for the existing knitting mill project and swung a radius around, we would be back up to about where that gazebo building is. So on our site, you see shaded in yellow, limit of both bordering vegetated wetland, top of bank, and the beginning of the riverfront area, which is 25 feet wide in the city of Fall River. And that's all associated with a portion of a little branch off of the Quikasham River. Our proposal primarily encompasses the existing paved surface of the property. If you look at your plans, you'll see an existing conditions plan that shows the limit of pavement, the limit of previous disturbance, and the limit of vegetation that exists out on the site. So we are proposing to construct these 16 townhouse-style buildings with associated parking. So our pavement, our new parking that's being proposed, you'll see I have shaded in a darker gray, and that will access off of the existing driveways that currently service the existing parking areas. So we don't have to construct any new driveways or right-of-ways. We're just going to be constructing some new parking area, all of which is outside of the buffer zone, with the exception of these last 2 spaces and this screen dumpster pad. This red bold line, that would be the 100-foot buffer zone to both the BVW and the coastal bank. Also on our plan, you'll see shaded in this pink line, probably a darker line on your plans, that's the limit of that AE flood zone. So we've developed a plan where we pulled basically all of the construction activities outside of the flood zone, and a small portion of the site, you'll see shaded up in this corner, units 14, 13, and 12 is what falls within the buffer zone to that wetland as well. And then from the rear of that building, heading out towards the Quikasham, you'll see we've delineated a very large ledge outcrop, probably sits 20 or 30 feet in the air. That currently exists in that location, and this area would be graded to make sure that stormwater and drainage can continue on the way that it's going now. Part of our design, and I think you'll see it on sheet 4, for our stormwater management is we've collected the roof runoff from all of these buildings and piped it forward to an underground infiltration system located well outside of the buffer zone, up under this paved portion of the site there as well. So the project, as far as the Conservation Commission goes in the Wetlands Protection Act, there really isn't a lot to talk about. We do have an altered site. Again, if you looked at the aerial, we're dealing with an old foundation, existing paved areas, and when you get into that wooded area, there is some debris, old utility poles. You can get a sense of, how much of this site was previously developed. I know a very crucial part of this project, or at least what everyone feels is a crucial part of it, although not in the purview of the Conservation Commission, is the fact that there is an easement we believe is in place, or at least plans prepared for the continuation of a second phase of the rail trail bike path. So I have, on the plan set that you have, we have shown what the limits are of that easement or proposed easement by the plans that we were able to obtain from the state, and to make sure that all of our proposed activities fall outside of that bike path. So if that ever does get built, I believe it would actually be an amenity for our site that anybody in this development could just hop right on the rail trail and be able to continue their way on. So as far as Wetlands Protection Act goes, I know that's not really a concern, but I know it is a concern of anybody with regards to the project as a whole. But I would recommend that that portion of that discussion is really not in the purview of the Conservation Commission. We're here to administer the Wetlands Protection Act, not bike trail and riverwalk regulations. But we wanted to make sure that the easement was shown on the plan and that any of our proposed activities fall outside of that area. That's the project in a nutshell. We have shown some preliminary landscaping. This project has also been submitted for site plan review, and there has been landscaping proposed on that plan. And through that review process, we'll handle those items such as drainage, lighting, making sure that we meet the parking requirements, making sure that we meet the requirements of the zoning permits that we've already gotten. And that process will continue on if we're successful before the Conservation Commission this evening. If you have any questions regarding any of it, even the rail trail, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
The existing paved area.
Yes.
Previously from Parker Candy days, I guess. I'm not quite sure I can tell where that is.
It probably, if you look at the actual design set of plans, it's delineated pretty well on that. And I can show you on the plan set that you have. So right now, on the site, as I said before, the back of the Knitting Mills project, and the gazebo.
Yeah.
You can see where this limit of asphalt is here. This asphalt actually extends a little bit in, but when you do that radius that I was speaking of, you can see that almost the entire site is considered old building, foundation slabs, and then the rear parking area that was behind it. And then this portion of the site is pavement that was just recently put in by the loft apartments as well. But if you look at the existing conditions plan,
Maybe on this one, that's previously paved there, that's extending down here.
I would say that it would extend from this gazebo area,
Yeah.
probably something in this nature. So what's out, maybe a little bit of that, the back of these buildings, falls beyond that. But if you open up the regular plan set, I can probably show you the exact line. And I think that, let's look at sheet number, let's start with 3.
This four.
This will be a site layout plan, sheet 3.
Yeah, those two.
So, this is the extent of the existing pavement
Okay.
that's there now. And the gazebo, of course, is here, so this is the end of that pavement. I'm just trying to follow the line over. Probably something in the direction like that.
Yeah, so most of buildings 9 through 14
Well,
are
outside of the
that
paved
previously
area.
disturbed.
What is the condition sheet, which is sheet number 2? That might be a little bit clearer. So this is what's out there now, okay? So again, here's the end of the parking, the end of the parking here. This is the existing asphalt area here. So pretty close to what I just had sketched out. This is the existing landscaping area for the gazebo, and this would be the limit of where the previously altered area, when you get in
Yeah,
there.
that's what I was sort of
Yep.
heading towards, the previously altered buffer zone.
Yep.
What were the alterations in there, other than the pavement? The pavement's not really.
When you get in there, you'll see that the trees are a little bit small. There are utility poles still back there. You'll see there's piles of debris. Like for instance, this is a pretty large area of some boulders that were piled up.
Yeah.
This is that ledge outcrop. And then again, you can see this is where the easement will be as well.
So the previously altered nature of this was, there was no building back there.
There was no building, but it was used, for parking, loading, storage. I mean, it was a disturbed area. Yeah.
And that's important because, what? What
No,
is that?
just so that you know what used to be on the site.
Just wondering if that has any impact or any.
No. Bill, Mr. Kenny, sir, I have not been able to hear you in your discussion because you're not near the microphone, but, which is fine, if you'd give us a summary of what you said or found out.
What I found out was where the area of pavement, the previous disturbance of the area with pavement was located.
Okay,
And,
the pavement's still there, I think.
Yes.
Pavement's still there.
Yeah, I
And then
walked
my
on
other
it.
question was whether, what the importance of the condition of this land as previously disturbed, if that has any impact on how you look at the buffer zone.
Again,
Thank
all
you.
the activities that are being proposed are allowed under the Wetlands Protection Act with certain performance standards. So in a case like this, I would say that it really doesn't matter what the existing area is consisting of. If it were, we're just trying to show an accurate depiction of what's on the ground existing so that it's not, a virgin forested upland area in association with the Quikasham. It's just knowledge that you have of what's out there.
I guess what I'm thinking is that when it comes to the buffer zone, that's an area where there are no real performance standards under the Act, correct?
Well, no, of
Or
course
that
there is.
correct?
No, that's the whole reason that we have to come before the Conservation Commission to show the activities that we're proposing within that 100-foot buffer zone. It is not a resource, so it's not like we're in a wetland
Well-
and destroying a wetland, but there are activities that are allowed in buffer zones, and that's
But the
development of all kinds.
the key is you shouldn't do anything in the buffer zone that would adversely impact the
The
resource
wetland,
area.
that's absolutely
Okay.
correct, yes.
So, but there's no particular place in the act, is there, that says these are the standards for buffer zones? It's more of a nebulous, it's a general
No, but
concept.
when you
right?
read through the Wetlands Protection Act, they'll tell you to look at different functions of what's being proposed. For instance, if we were going to build our entire parking lot in that buffer zone, that would be looked at a little bit differently and more stringent than if we were just proposing buildings that create clean runoff and grass and landscaped areas. So you can see the difference of the performance standard for what it would be for each. So if we were putting our parking lot there, then of course that needs to meet a higher level of stormwater management and drainage design, because now we're actually impacting and discharging inside of the buffer zone. So what we're proposing in the buffer zone is not paved surfaces, it's not parking lots. Actually, the rail trail would be actually more of a detriment to the buffer zone than our proposal, because they would be putting in a paved swath that close to the Quequechan River. We're
But-
not doing that.
But aren't building 14, 13, and 12 mainly in the buffer zone?
In the buffer zone, absolutely, and that's what I said in my presentation.
Okay, but,
But runoff generated from rooftops is considered 100% clean. It's not a paved surface, it doesn't attract oils and sediments from vehicles, and have to deal with the runoff associated with the paved surface.
okay. I guess I always sort of struggle with this a little bit when it comes to buffer zones, and some folks come in here and they treat the buffer zone as really the Wild West. They can do whatever the hell they want, and then we
Well,
have
they
to rein
can,
them
as
in.
long as they provide proper sediment barrier when they're doing construction.
Right.
That when they're actually doing the activity, that they make sure that they stabilize the slopes, that they keep slopes as flat as possible, and don't create steep slopes in the buffer zone, which we've been able to keep them just about dead flat with the existing grade that's being proposed there. So again, what you do, I mean, if we were coming in and wanted to propose to fill the buffer zone with 10 feet of fill and put a retaining wall 5 feet away from the wetland edge, of course you would look at that differently than a grass landscaped area and the roof runoff from 3 buildings. So it is drastically different. So for what we are proposing, we feel that we meet the performance standards for this type of activity in a buffer zone, which is primarily vegetate the surfaces. It's more of a practice, making sure that you have proper erosion control up during construction activities, that we're not creating steep slopes. And it's apples and oranges when you deal with what is someone proposing in a buffer zone.
So you would say that, and I've read your notes on your various plans, and there's a section there that talks about erosion control and so forth. And so your presentation is that those standards and those undertakings that the developers has agreed to comply with are adequate protection for, if you do those in the wetlands, you've...
Well, we're not in the wetlands.
I'm
It's
sorry,
different,
I'm
in the
sorry, I
buffer zone.
misspoke. If you do those things in the buffer zone, you've taken the adequate precautions to make sure that activities in that buffer zone don't adversely affect the resource area next to it, which is the
That is
riverfront
correct.
and the water.
That is correct.
wetlands.
And if the board decided to vote, and move the project forward, they can place special conditions upon the applicant to ensure that those things happen. I know you do have standard conditions with regards to the hay bales and silt fence and making sure they're up. In past practice, you've asked us to put up some signs about, you are close to a wetland resource area, those kinds of things. So those types of conditions can be placed upon what is to occur there. This will be basically open space, manicured, and will allow us to actually clean up what's taking place in that buffer zone, again, being, a depleted and previously disturbed buffer zone.
So the bottom line is whatever you propose to do in the buffer zone on these plans is not going to have any adverse effect on the resource area.
That's correct, and under the Wetlands Protection Act, we have to ensure that happens.
Yeah. Thanks.
Now, I know the runoff from the roofs are tied into one drain. How about the parking lot? Is that
The
going into
parking
that?
lot, there's an existing drainage system that entire area runs to already.
Okay.
Associated with both projects. This was all under one previous ownership. So any of the stormwater created out, we're taking our buildings. So when we look at this plan, and again, we look at how we've got a large mass of impervious surface with all,
Yeah.
with the buildings and paving. So what we're doing is, you'll see now with the establishment of all of this new green area, so we've taken our impervious surfaces where it was singular before, which promotes runoff at a higher degree, by breaking that up and creating green space around these proposed buildings, sidewalks and things of that nature. That's what we want to do. We actually, it's called modified impervious surfaces, so that we've broken it up into intermittent. So this paved surface and this paved surface, which actually this is already paved, there is a catch basin here and a drainage system that runs through, both here, a drainage system that discharges here, and a drainage system again here that discharges. So we've made sure that our proposed activities, again, this is already a paved surface, we'll be adding some additional pavement here, but getting rid of pavement that's untreated in this location. And then again, these buildings, so what we have to do is a balancing act, that we need to collect enough, treat enough, and do enough, so that way the post-development, once this is built, that the runoff is not higher than the existing runoff. In a project like this, where we have a starting point of almost entirely a paved altered surface, it's very easy to do. But we've taken the steps to collect all of the runoff from this front section of buildings, pipe it up through a system, and you'll see that on sheet 4, and then infiltrate that into a series of the plastic dome chambers that you see. There'll be a series of those underneath this paved area that will accept that.
Yeah, right, sounds good. And then I know you're still working on the landscaping, so maybe in the future you might have a few trees.
Well, what I would suggest again, through site plan review, and if you look on the site layout plan, it'll show exactly what species of trees we've called for and how many. If the commission wants, and of course they have every right to ask for it, if there's any additional screening, buffer, certain types of plantings that they want in these locations, they can make that a condition of approval. And we have to submit revised plans just to you as well, and to site plan review, showing what those additional plantings ought to be. And we would not be opposed to any type of a planting schedule that you guys wanted in that buffer zone area. Just don't put it in the bike path.
No. All right, any questions now?
I think he's answered everything for me.
Robert?
I have a couple.
Sure.
And I know there are people here who are interested in the path. But before I get to that, you talked about, basically, what I heard you say was that you were not going to take down, cover, or destroy any current green area.
I did not say that.
What?
I did not say that.
Well, that's what I thought I heard you say.
Nope. That's,
Okay, when you're in back there, when you walk from the gazebo to the next, I guess it's Knitting Mills,
Yep.
yeah, okay. That's basically, if I walk that, a lot of it, as I did today, I'm walking parallel to the bike path, and I'm walking parallel to the river.
Yep.
Okay. You go back from, there's a fallen stone wall that's been, in other words, you head towards the river. That's what I wanted to say. And there's some empty area. Then there's a little rise, and there's a bunch of trees and brush and various other kinds of things. Now, are you going to be going in there?
Without knowing exactly what area you're talking about, what I can explain to you is that, again, for orientation purposes, here's where that gazebo is that you were talking about.
I can't possibly see that, okay.
Can you just push over on the side so we can see too? Like on that side?
I'm making a presentation to the board. If you want to come up, by all means, come on up and see it.
That's fine.
And when you want to ask your questions, we'll figure out a way.
Yeah, I can't possibly see from
No,
where I
not a
sit.
problem. So here's where the gazebo sits now,
Yeah,
okay? There's actually a walking path that goes around the gazebo,
yes, there is.
and then there's a fenced-in area with the grass around it.
I missed that.
Well,
Okay.
so outside of that walking path, it's landscaped, correct? And then there's a black aluminum fence that runs right
Yeah,
there.
I think there is, yeah.
Okay. So directly adjacent to that is where our first building would be.
Okay,
Here's the gazebo, here would be our first building.
right. And,
So yes, there is activity to take place in this area to clean this area up. There will be some trees that are cut, the scrub trees that are left, and this area will be landscaped. Proposed lawn, trees, and everything else. This is a large ledge outcrop. Did you get to that?
I missed
You
that.
can't miss that. It's 30 feet in the air. It's like a big piece of ledge that comes up out of the ground.
Okay,
So for orientation purposes, we're well to the north of that. So this area will be cleaned out. And so you see that there were some utility poles in there, there's a lot of trash. And like I was explaining before to Bill, right now, the broken pavement ends generally, in this location like this.
okay.
But yes, there will be some existing green space that will be improved.
And there'll be some existing green space that won't
That-
be there anymore.
Yes, well, it will be something that's going to be changed to different kinds of green space. What you see shaded in dark green,
Yeah,
that's the area that's not even being touched.
okay.
We're not even,
Okay.
there's nothing to take place in that.
Because that is, among other things, this is, I think, our concern. This is a concern of our committee, of the commission. That is a green area. It is wildlife habitat.
Same wildlife habitat that we're going to build a bike trail through, and have already done.
That's right.
It's an allowable activity in a buffer zone.
I didn't say it wasn't allowed.
Well, no, I understand, but I can see where you're heading to. So we have not put any buildings in those locations, and we are proposing basically to clean up the existing green space that's there.
Okay. And the other concern I have with that particular green space is you're essentially going to have quite some lawn there.
That's correct,
And the lawn is close to the Quikasham River.
correct,
The Quikasham River flows into the Taunton River.
yes.
Would you be willing to not to use nitrogen or phosphates?
Absolutely, and that's normally a condition that if they move the project, that a condition can be placed that those types of fertilizers are not used, 100%.
Thank you. And I know there were, Mr. Chairman, I know there's citizens, several
They'll
citizens.
all have a chance to speak.
Walter, did you have any questions?
No, you guys are asking all the good questions.
Anyone in the public like to speak?
I would like to see exactly what was pointed to we couldn't see because the guy was over on this side here. Could you show us where that was? Because I have concerns about basically cars that are parking there. It's going to be a rental property, so,
Right now, here's the existing gazebo.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, we just need your name.
Yep, John Sylvia,
John Sylvia?
Yep.
Address,
51 Ada,
51.
Ada, A-D-A Street.
So, again, for orientation purposes, this is the existing loft building. This is their existing parking lot, which ends about here. This is their gazebo building, there's a walkway around it, with some landscaping that comes right up to this area here. They have a drainage discharge right here, there's a head wall,
Yes, sir.
right behind their building. Our proposed building is directly adjacent to the existing gazebo building and would run through this way. This is the knitting mill complex. This is the end of their existing parking lot. So what we've done is we've gone from this development to this development and connected a straight line
Just
from
from spending
there.
$1.5 billion.
So what'll happen
on the
is,
system.
this is the easement that's been proposed for the rail trail, something like that. So to make sure that we were well outside of that with any of our proposed activities.
So where were the cars parked for those buildings?
Here and here, the dark gray areas, which are directly adjacent to the existing driveways that are already built.
Okay. What about, you were talking about in that complex, there's a shared drain.
Yeah.
Who's going to control that? If you have
This
three
will be-
separate owners?
This will be either a condominium association or a privately owned rental property. So it's either one general owner who rents all of the units, usually a management company, or it would be a condominium association where everything except for the buildings is owned by the association.
I'm talking about the two abutting properties. If you have one thing for those two, right? Do you have one drainage thing that those two people connect onto, or are you going to have your own system? Because you said you're going to connect with the...
Right, no, so what happens is, our building's here,
Yep.
where we are connecting to this backyard, and then we are installing an underground infiltration system to handle all of the runoff from this. Right now, this site currently runs in two different directions. That flow will continue the way that it flows now.
Okay, so it's not sharing it where people are going to fight 10 years down the road,
No.
I'm not cleaning this,
No.
you're going to clean it?
No.
All right. Yeah,
Again, what we're proposing for pavement is this limited green, this limited gray, where the site currently is. Again, this yellow line is our property line, so currently, that's already what's paved. So we're getting rid of a bunch of pavement.
You're aware of how long it took to get that bike path going. You know what I mean? So I just want to say this. I didn't want you to think I was adversarial or anything, but we live here. We live here. You know what I mean? So if I lived in Dartmouth or Fairhaven, I'd be at the same meetings doing that.
I
Unfortunately,
understand
people don't
completely.
advocate here, and then when it's built, they complain later on.
And that's why
So-
we made sure that with what the easement is the easement, not an inch over the easement. So the city or whoever the bike path committee or whatever the group is, they have the ability to use this piece of land. The city of Fall River owned this piece of land up until 2 years ago. They could have kept the whole thing if they wanted to make a park and more of a bike trail. It's my understanding that it's going to be very difficult to find the additional funding to build another trail. But again, that has nothing to do with the Conservation Commission or the Wetlands Protection
Actually,
Act.
I disagree with that strongly.
But again, it has nothing to do with,
I didn't say it did,
I'm just saying
but
that
you made the statement, and I want to be...
because that's what I'm being told.
Well, I'm telling you the reverse. That's
So
all.
again, all we can do as far as permitting and dealing with the Conservation Commission is make sure that we're outside of that area. So if anything ever does happen, there's nothing to impede that from taking place.
Thanks.
Okay, just state your name and address.
My name's Jim Cusick, 1528 Highland Avenue. I'm also chairman of the City Fall River Bike and Pedestrian Commission. And-
I didn't recognize you before. Sorry.
It's the masks. And I agree with Mr. Aguirre, this isn't Conservation Commission, but I came here tonight because we are concerned. Phase 4 of the bike path, the connection between Britland Park and Father Travasso's, that's been on the planning board since 2013, I believe. Mr. Kenny could probably...
I can't account for about a 2-year and 6-month gap.
But it was I believe it was 2013 when Brown, Richardson, and Rowe started the planning on that because they were already planning.
Probably
It's around
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's around there.
So that was our big concern. I mean, money was put up by the state for the planning and design of this, and we didn't want to see this disappear. And like you said, it's a great amenity for the development if they do it.
For all
Because, they just walk right out there, they're on the path. A lot of people in the knitting mill and the other mill, they all use that path. And you can just walk out the door, they're on it. But that is our big concern is, whether we're going to be able to get that easement in there. But that's
Perfectly
not,
understandable.
I know
Yeah.
it's not yours,
Well,
it's with SciTech and.
I represent this Conservation CPA Board, and we voted in to have the drawings made up, which was the number one thing to get going before they got money from the state.
Yeah.
So it is a concern of us. I mean, I think it was $450,000, which taxpayers are already paying on, so
Yeah.
it is a concern to us, so.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that it's going to be able to fit in there somehow and that,
Yeah.
I mean, you showed the area where you.
Yeah,
said it was
so
going
what
to
we
go.
did was, there was a Phase 4 plan set,
Yeah.
98 pages long, that Mr. Kenny and I went through. We took those drawings and we've superimposed those drawings onto our plans to make sure that we're outside of that area.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I do have one question about that, Dan. I see is up north on these?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
So this would be sort of the northeasterly line of the easement?
Where are we?
Bike path easement.
Point my direction. Northeasterly?
I'll come over.
Okay.
These things are muffin.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's your bike path behind there. And that's right at the patio, right?
Yep.
Of these owners. Is that gonna be a problem for people that would wanna live here? I mean, if they're sitting on their patio, the bike's gonna be...
Well, what'll happen is,
This close going by.
it will, no different than when you walk out, if you live in the city of Fall River and you walk out your front door, you're stepping onto a sidewalk on a city street.
I actually have that
Actually,
sidewalk.
this would
I'd like
be,
to- I'd like to speak to
this
it.
would be a drastic improvement from walking out your front door and necessarily walking onto a street. So again, we see this as an amenity to the site. The easement is the easement, as I stated.
Yeah, it is.
An inch over is not.
Yeah.
We've chosen not to put the buildings right on the easement, so there will be a little bit of a patio area connector, so that way they can walk out their back door, however the house is designed, and walk directly onto the path
I
at a
think each
flat
of these
rate.
guys would like to buy a unit. probably.
By all means, they can contact the owner, whoever ends up constructing it, and I'm sure they could buy one. It's no different than having to, we can't build in a city street, but we can build a certain distance to it by zoning. A line is a line, and you can build up to it or next to it. Again, if when the easement was taken, or if it has been taken, if they said, okay, we're going to take an easement 20 feet wide, and then on top of that, you can't build anything within 100 feet of it. That would be, that would be a different situation.
That's not what the plan
Correct.
proposed as.
That's correct.
not what-
That's not to say that the bike trail or that the state couldn't come in now and say, you know what? Before this gets built, we don't think 20 feet's enough. We want a 50-foot easement. And that's fine. But then there is a cost associated with that as for a taking, and then this landowner has to be compensated for what land is being taken. Maybe the city shouldn't have even sold this piece of land. They probably should have kept it for themselves. But that's not what happened. They've sold it. They sold it without presenting the fact that there may or may not be an easement on the property. And that's why it's been a little bit difficult to find out. So we've taken it to the step that if it is in place, we've abided by it, and we will not construct anything within it.
Okay. Sir, do you have something to say?
Sure.
Just state your name and address.
Sure. Carlos Caesar. I'm the president from the Flint Neighborhood Association. And I wish I could bring all my, 112 Flint Street. I wish I could bring all my people to speak in here, but I was told just a couple of people to represent the community. And we have plenty of signatures to present.
That, by the way, for the record, that was not a requirement or mandate. It was a suggestion
A
that,
suggestion.
in view of the
And we
fact
talked.
that...
And we talked.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna speak a little loud so Reverend can actually hear me and I don't have to repeat myself 5 times. So, I'm gonna tell you what I see here. And if you don't know, I was involved in the development of the 2 mills that hold now over 220 apartments with people older than 65 years old there. I have so many issues, but I'm just going to discuss the ones that it's under this committee. This mill right here is going to have to remove the gazebo for the bike path. I'm right?
Yep.
This mill here is going to have to give up this back parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to do this behind the property. That's a question I have. And if you guys already match the bike path on top of this design, you should realize that the bike path is right here. It's not here. It's right here. The bike path is right here on these 2 properties. Okay? So that's the first question I have, that the bike path phase 4 is not matching this plan. Now, I don't even want to talk about the easement, who uses the entry for this property. back here, and just to correct Mr. Aguirre when he talked, and he said, according to, that's what they did to build the bike path, they used some green land. He's correct. That's how it was done. But they didn't build houses that if I need to tie my shoe, I'm going to sit in somebody else's house. That's a big difference to me. So, I don't know if you walk all the way back here. I did. Jim did. You have a fence here that we question. Is state land on the other side? Because it's fenced for the highway. And that's where we have all the live animals. From deers to, you call it, birds. So I do have a question about this fence. If they want to even take that fence down. The land behind that fence, who belongs to? Because in a lot of lands, when you have a highway going by and you have a fence up, that's the division line. They divided by fence. That's another question I have over there. Coming over here, I want you to realize one thing. The space that we're talking about here, it's only the foundation from the candy mill. That's the only space we're talking about. So if they don't have, if they cannot use more land back here, it's no way they want to squeeze all this in here. This line that divides here, can you explain me why is this line here?
That's
The red line?
That's the 100-foot buffer zone.
Correct.
Thank you. That means if you don't give permission for the 100 feet, for them to touch 100 feet, they cannot build this. What make it not worth it? And again, this land was offered to be by the Kenai Mills. They offered to buy this to extend their parking lot. But back then, and I don't want to, open more boxes. Back then, was worth it not to sell for $75, but to sell it for a couple of $100, for a couple of $100,000, because it was a lot of money to be made there. So what we have now, we have a small piece of land that needs an easement to get in, okay? And it's not worth it much. Well, I have so many questions about this, and the fact it's all elderly people living in there, and how this is going to affect that area, not just with traffic, but conservation. I don't know if it's under conservation, the fact that this land needs to be tested, because there was a mill there that burned down. And I don't want this to pass it without being tested, the land to be tested. I know that I'm forgetting a lot of stuff, but this is what I see now. I see a small piece of land that it's not worth it much. Beautiful project. I have to congratulate him. I mean, for the space that he had to work with and the project that he put together, I have to give him credit for it. It's a beautiful project. It's too bad it's in a bad area. That's going to affect a lot of people future. And I cannot see, you have between this mill here and this mill here, you have 220 people living in there, families living in there. Half of them don't drive. They use scooters all the way around the buildings. And I'm just seeing now a young family that has all the right. They bought the house, beautiful house, with a beautiful deck. They have all the rights to stay out until 11 o'clock at night, to have their barbecues. They have all the rights to do that, like everybody else. But I cannot picture 200 people, elderly people that goes to bed at 9 o'clock at night, having to call the cops now every night because somebody has the right on their property to be with the loud music until 11 o'clock at night. So I know that's not for your board. Like I said, we missed the zoning was tabled in December, was tabled in January, was tabled in February, and then passed in March. Nobody showed up to speak. I just want to make sure that the next boards this project's gonna come up, I'm probably just wasting my time, but at least I can rest my head at night and say to my neighborhood that I did my job, I tried to stop it. Thank you for the board.
So my only question is, you would rather see another parking lot instead of new houses?
I mean, what else more can go in here? You know, I mean, it's a small piece of land. They want to do a Dunkin' Donuts over there, they probably will do good. You know, but that's the thing, it's a very small area.
16 units.
And-
is a lot.
And it's business here too. If you drive by there, you see the cars parked against the wall in here all the time. And then they have deliveries. You cannot imagine the traffic just for deliveries to this area here, to these two buildings that use this. So, hey, I tried. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. You know, I do want to say that,
Can I respond?
yeah, go ahead,
You
absolutely,
go
Ryan.
first.
When you compare the project of what is there right now, when I see what's being developed, it actually looks greener by putting this development in there. And I think that it improves the value of the area entirely, because right now it's an eyesore. And then as far as environmental and conservation, which is what we're here for, I think it's actually better to go in there and treat this area than it is to leave it the way it is. Who knows what's in there, like you said, you know, there could be contaminants, like you guys are gonna have to go clean that all up. And it'll actually be safer for the residents in that area. So I thank you, Carlos. I appreciate what you said, and I agree that people will be upset, but I think that their property values and their location will actually improve and will be better off with the actual nature of the area once this project's done. So I do appreciate what you said, and thank you. I think you're right in a lot of areas. So.
If I can respond to just a couple of items. So, getting back to one of the first things that Mr. Caesar said, he does a lot of great work, and we've worked together on some other projects. He has said that he was involved in the conversion of this mill and this mill, both of which also needed zoning relief to do what they wanted to do there and here. So not only did they get the same special permit that we got, at a higher density, of course, they also went as far as asking for a waiver of the parking requirement. So right now, these two buildings were less than 1.5 spaces per unit. This mill always had eyes on buying this and didn't buy it. They wanted it to make a parking lot for additional parking, just as you had said, Mr. Chairman. We went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We had first looked at, and the reason why it got tabled to a few different items, we had first looked at a 6-story building with 48 units in it, with a parking lot in the back, a massive asphalt, and a massive building. The developer wanted to do something different, take in the amenities of the river, create some additional green space, break it up, reduce the amount of overall units, and provide parking at a rate of 2 spaces per unit, meeting the parking requirement for a dwelling. 2 spaces is what's required. We didn't ask for a waiver of those parking requirements. We met those requirements. Getting back to these 2 buildings when they were developed. Here's the 100-foot buffer zone as it existed. all of this parking lot, paved surfaces, horrible paved surfaces that collect silt and oils and drains from all of this pavement, collected, discharged into the river, all within the buffer zone. Same thing in this complex. This whole parking lot, this paved surface, all well into the 100-foot buffer zone. We've gone to the point of designing a project that kept those paved surfaces, as I said originally, outside of this very, crucial environmental area, and have minimized the activities and the kinds of activities being proposed well under the guidelines of the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think when you look at the whole project, again, this is a commercially zoned area, commercial mill district, with a number of industrial uses that are allowed by right. When you look at what could happen in this district by right, I cannot, for the life of me, understand how you would think that this is not a benefit to this entire surrounding area. This is not a small piece of land. It's a small piece of land in relative size to the abutting large mill complexes, but this is 68,000 square feet, almost an acre and a half. There aren't many spots in the city of Fall River that you can come up with an acre and a half of land and put together a project like this that has green space, appropriate parking, sidewalks, and be able to create a different type of living arrangement than what we have in these two buildings. And with regards to the age restriction, the parking requirements, all of those things don't really come before the Conservation Commission. But what does come before the Conservation Commission is what is being proposed in that buffer zone. And I think you can see, I can design this and build a parking lot and put all the drainage in, all down in this area, and build one big square building and put 48 over 65 units. But environmentally, is that a better plan? I think not. I think this is clearly, overall, a much better plan and use for this property, creating a different type of housing stock and mixing in. We looked at commercial uses, a 6-story building with retail uses on the floor. We ran through the gamut. And actually, I think the first zoning plan we submitted, again, was one singular large building with all parking lot in this rear of the building, because topographically, that's what works. And would allow us to even create a parking deck underneath the building to add more parking spaces. That's not the route that they chose. This is the route that they chose to minimize their activity while still creating a profitable development moving forward. Thank you.
Do you have another question, Reverend?
Yeah, I have a couple more questions that came up. One of the issues had to do with the quality of the land under the, has that been evaluated?
There has been Phase 1 environmental work done. Not my firm doesn't do that kind of work, but I do know that the owner has taken that on. When you buy it at an auction, as how the city sold it, you buy whatever the city is selling. So yes, they will have to go through all of those steps, and if there's any cleanup to take place, that has to be done before it can be used for residential purposes. If they find out later on down the road that, hey, you know what, it's going to cost too much, then they can go back to use it for a commercial use where that cleanup doesn't have to take place. So yes, that.
Could we add that as a condition?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Fine.
and I mean, and they really have to, I mean, by state law. But by all means, the condition would be
That's an
fine.
answer. That's what I assumed, but you mentioned repeatedly that the property was purchased 2 years ago?
I believe somewhere around that. I can give you the
So
exact
that
date.
the current, not with the current mayor, but with the previous mayor.
I'll give you the exact date. Hold on one second.
And I would then ask who the owners are. I realize it says ASE, but that doesn't, I don't know anything about that.
We're getting there.
And I agree with your comment, maybe the city shouldn't have sold it all, but that's water under the dam, over the dam, whatever. I mean, I think it was about 2 years ago. I mean, I'll take
Yeah, I
your
should be
word
able
for
to-
that.
I'm just looking for the
concerned
zoning
as to who
application.
the owners are.
ASE has a number of different owners. I can tell you who signed for them as part of the application. It is listed. Would it-
Oh, it's in
The-
the paperwork.
Yes. Oh, it has to be, yes. So the listed owner, and you'll see that we've put in the corporate documents for ASE as well. And let me get to that. The application was signed by David Saber, who is the manager of the trust, of the LLC, sorry.
Is this David Saber of the planning board?
No. He was on the zoning board of appeals a
That's
number
what
of
I
years
meant,
ago.
yeah.
He's not a member any longer. And I believe it was bought at auction in like 18, I think. It had been owned, it was foreclosed upon
Right,
for tax
it's
title.
just that there are several things that went to auction that way, one of them being the parcel of land in the south end that had a pad schedule for it.
Yes, you're right, around the King Philip Mill.
Right, and
Yep.
that was sold. And it was not a question of, it was not inadvertent. It was, the matter was discussed and it was sold. Okay. I can't. And while you're, just the other question I had, we have a new set of maps.
Correct.
What is the difference between the new set and the old set that I spent quite a bit of time looking at?
The new set, Mr. Kenny asked me to show where the easement fell, and that required us to move like 2 or 3 buildings 5 feet further away from the wetland. That's the only difference.
And that's in this piece of paper.
And you have a large set as well. I gave you reduced sets because it's easier to look at the table, and then you also have,
Okay, and that's correct, Bill?
Yes.
Fine, thank you. By the way, I would also hope you could maximize the green area that's wild. Again, this is, it relates to the river.
so what'll happen is, again, if you walk through there, you'll see the quality of vegetation isn't great. However, as a condition of approval, it can be written in that as much existing vegetation that can be preserved is preserved. And through site plan review, Bill can go look at it and say, we want to save this tree, we want to save that tree, and we can specifically locate those trees and make sure that they do get preserved.
Okay. Can we do
And
that?
again, whatever additional landscaping is required through site plan review,
And we
we'd be
don't
more
want,
than glad.
we don't want nitrogen and stuff that will flow into the river.
Understandable.
And the quality of the number of, I've had, I was part of a group which delivered food and made a number of trips to Knitting Mill, that whole complex. And it does seem, I think basically what the Flint people, and I take we have representatives here from past president and the current president of both Niagara Association and the Flint Association, and we have the chairperson of the bicycle committee. And I think basically you're, Carlos, you're saying there's too many apartments there. Is that right? You're saying there's basically too many people? Or are you concerned with the fact that they're over 65?
I'm concerned that's too many for that area, being single like that.
Okay, I heard you right. Okay.
Yeah, because half of that, I mean, I can count over there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 buildings cannot be raised if they don't touch the 100 feet buffering zone. That's about 6 buildings.
Okay, I don't think we
To
can
tell you the
touch
truth, I don't know which it's better, if it's one building with 40 apartments or 16 buildings. You know, I mean,
The crazy thing is that this development may actually be better than what has gone on. And I was not impressed, by the way, with going through those large buildings with one bedroom.
well,
And,
Reverend, I can give you my opinion. I would prefer to have one building with 40 families there that will match close to the other buildings and have not to touch the green space. the green space we have back there and leave that alone.
It's
To
gonna be,
me-
it's gonna be touched for parking.
Say
So
what,
that-
Dave, Ron?
If we put in a 40-unit singular building, as I explained before, we're going to use that area for parking, because there are
Right,
requirements.
I think this is as good as they can do. And is this for families?
Yes, yeah. There'll be single family, they're townhouse, 3 buildings in a group,
So that
but they will be
my daughter
single
and her
families.
My
yes.
daughter and her husband could move there in their 50s and
Absolutely.
live there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, we can't touch this, the kind of thing that's constructed. We can't, I wish there were, we just can't do it, and it will not interfere with the path.
That is correct. And again, as a condition of approval, it should state such.
We should, yeah, absolutely.
What was that condition, I'm sorry?
As a condition of approval, that there should be no construction or no structure built in the easement of the bike path. And we've gone so far as to even ensure that there are no utility lines, there's nothing underneath the bike path, everything is in the front portion of the building. We understand, what that bike path means to everybody in the city. There's no doubt about it. And that's why we took the steps to make sure that that did not happen.
All right. All set then?
So you're suggesting that this board could impose a condition that, as part of the order of conditions, that no permanent structures would be built in, on, or under that easement
That
area?
is correct, yep. And I think I presented that to you via email last week as well.
It would interfere, impede, or whatever, or paths, for that matter. You're not planning to put in a driveway over the...
Absolutely not, no. We're showing it as green space.
Okay.
And when they do want to build the bike path, they'll have to go through the remaining permitting. They may need to do some stormwater management with regards to creating a paved surface in the buffer zone, but they've got to deal with that with the whole path, just like they have in the past.
Okay.
Just state your name.
And we've got the fertilizer
We
restriction.
have all that in, yep.
I'm going to need some language, Reverend Hornsby, on the fertilizer. Is it just no
No
nitrogen-based?
nitrogen, an ecologically acceptable fertilizer.
Is that an accepted term in the
And I will-
business?
I think
have
you,
asked several
I actually, I
people.
think you've written into some other orders
We have.
in the past.
We
So,
have.
yeah, so whatever the general language is.
Yeah.
I think you probably ghost wrote the...
Nitrogen
I
seems
did
to
not.
be the big
No?
item.
Nope.
You know,
I'm not a
unfortunately.
fertilizer
I
guy,
was going
so
to say, are you a fertilizer?
No.
guy?
But I will, again...
I don't
ask-
fertilize
So
my
we-
grass and I don't waste my water to keep it green.
Yeah, so we're going
It
to
was
say,
crunchy this year.
There you go.
include the standard fertilizer clause.
Yeah.
And you're not going to take water from the river?
No, absolutely
Water,
not, no.
right?
No, public water, sewer, all the utilities are already in place, all documented via easement that has run with this property for many, many years, all of them tied in together.
You're not taking water out and you're not putting water in either, right?
That's
Your
correct.
drainage
Well, we're not
is-
putting any more in than is currently going there.
Yeah, right.
That's the standard.
Louis Ferrero, 3547 North Main Street, Fall River. Just some quick questions. Who or what company may have performed the wetland survey and when? Is there an operation maintenance plan for the infiltration system? And I was just looking at the specs. I know there's a hay bale spec, and I know it will be in the buffer zone, but may you be able to illustrate where that
Certainly.
may
So,
be close?
it's a little bit more detailed on the plan set that you have there. When you see this dark bold line, that's the limit of work erosion control barrier. And you have the full plan set, that's a little bit more detailed than the presentation plan. Yes. And again, on the last sheet of the plan set, there is an operation and maintenance plan for all of the stormwater management activities, and that's included in the notice of intent as well. Was there another question?
When the delineation was done?
Oh, so the delineation has been done 3 times. It was done initially for this project, It was then done again for the rail trail. It was then done again when the knitting mills did theirs, and it all encompasses the whole thing. And then our wetland scientists went back out and rehung the flags, and they were pretty much within inches. You could actually see the knots from some of the older flags. And that was done by Chris Capone, he's a wetland scientist.
Thank you.
Dan, I'm sorry, the limit of work line, is that the blank dotted line, dashed line here?
Yes, when you look at, that's why it's shaded two different ways on the presentation
Yeah.
plan, but you'll see, same thing here. This would be the erosion control silt fence that wraps around the window. I don't have my glasses on, but I believe that says proposed erosion control barrier.
Yes, it does. Okay, good. Yep.
And again, I think, I don't know specifically, but our standard detail, was it just silt fence that we had shown? Or was it hay bales and silt fence?
Hay bales.
Hay bales and silt fence, that's about as good as you can get. Some people try and get away with the wattles or just silt fence. We normally spec hay bales and silt fence.
Yeah. He wants to talk about it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, we're not opposed to closing the public hearing and allowing the board to put together their special conditions and vote on it at the next
Well, we
meeting.
have most of them done. We
But
just want to make
you want to make sure that, you know, that we're on the ball. As long as we know the project is moving forward, we still have to go through site plan review, you know, tabling it for a month, which I believe you meet every month.
Yes.
Just vote to close the public hearing portion of it, and then you can craft your conditions. And again, whatever conditions, commissions and boards don't necessarily understand this. You can put just about any condition you want in there. It's up to us to either accept them or not. You know, if we decide that something gets thrown in that, you know, it wasn't something that was discussed and it was just totally outlandish, we have the ability to appeal that to the state and DEP. So I take it at, you know, at the honor of the commission that they're going to place and create some special conditions of things that we discussed this evening. That's always worked well in the past. So to make sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed, we're not opposed to doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
do that next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So just let me ask Reverend Hornsby one thing. You had talked about, Jim, about the soil conditions, and I guess you had talked about soil conditions. Did you say you wanted,
Yeah, I want
A test of
a
some kind, or-
condition that they essentially do a thorough evaluation of any possible pollution. And Dan said, his words were probably better than mine.
Normally what it would be prior to any construction activity taking place, that they, you know, provide clean 21E or clean environmental testing or cleanup, or that no activities to take place until they have that clean bill of health,
Right.
whatever the
That's-
verbiage needs to be.
I mean,
Okay.
We don't want to get into a King Philip Mill thing here.
No, absolutely not. Nope.
so, Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest unless there are any other questions, that maybe a motion to table this to the next meeting would be
We'll close the
good,
public
and,
hearing first and then.
Yeah, close the public hearing, table to the next
So
meeting.
can I have a motion to close the
And-
public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
And in the meantime, between now and the next meeting, to direct me to put together some specs for the special conditions, to show them to Mr. Aguirre and his client, and then hopefully have them in a condition at the next meeting for you to endorse. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So I interrupted your motions to close the meeting, sorry.
Motion closed, I think
I
Andy.
did.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, meeting closed.
We're tabling it to the next meeting.
Tabling for we're going to table this to November, December.
December 7th.
December
7th.
already, huh?
December 7th, 5:30, and tentatively in this room, right? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see what
that
happens
is
by
so-
then. Let's hope we can come back and have another public hearing. Excellent. Make sure everybody votes tomorrow, if they haven't already voted.
Yeah.
Bill's had his pin on since September.
Every day, because I'm ready to
He's figured out a way to vote every day. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks. Okay, next on the meeting,
Of course, brother. Great job.
number 2 is consideration of and cease and desist order in connection with SE-24-719 Globe Street and Ash Street, Coastwise Development LLC for failure to submit construction plans / SEWPPP as required by special condition order number 2 of the order of condition issued 12/19/2018.
I have some information for you on that. This had to do with a project for development of 5 townhouse units, each, 5 townhouse buildings, each with 2 units, off of Globe Street. The original order of conditions that was issued for this asked or required the developer to submit this CSWPPP, which is a construction stormwater pollution prevention plan. That was required as a special condition number 2 of the order of conditions. And I have been talking with the developer about that over a long period of time, only to find out upon further investigation that the CSWPPP, or the CSWIP, is only required if the project exceeds 1 acre, and this project does not. So it was beyond the commission's authority to require that when they issued the original order of conditions. On the other hand, in its place, there are some stormwater management standards that were presented to the developer. They agreed to adhere to them, and just reminded them that they need to do that. So this came up in connection with the site plan review of this project and the request for an occupancy certificate for the first building that was completed. And whenever we do the site plan review process, we check to see whether the Conservation Commission's been involved, see if there's been any order of condition issued, and that's where we ran into this. So, long story short, we're holding them to the standards that we can hold them to, and we can't require the CSWIP, and so there's no need to issue a cease and desist. It's a long story for saying, just delete number 2 from your agenda.
Okay.
But I felt you
So
should know why.
No vote, no place on file?
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty, number 3, approval of minutes, October 5th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second him.
Alrighty, take vote.
Aye.
Vote passes. Public input? No one's here.
Louis here.
Yeah. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, meeting adjourned.